All right. We are going to be, I'll be sharing a story with you. But first, I want you guys to gather together at a nearby table and discuss this question that's also written on the thing standing up on your table there. Think of a time when you were struggling in life. Were there any spiritual insights you gained during that time? Talk about what you learned, okay? So feel free to get up and go to an adjacent table. So think about a time where you were struggling in life. Maybe it was struggling in a certain area of life. Were there any spiritual insights you gained during that time? You've got 3 minutes. Wrap up those discussions. All right, if there's anything that came out of the discussions at your table that you feel would be a good thing to share with the rest of us, just slip your hand up, and John Moyle will bring a microphone.
Yes.
Anyone? Oh.
I would just share that for me personally, the most difficult times in my life have also been the most intimate times with God. And so I would never have chosen that path and said, oh yeah, let's go in that direction. But having been there and walked through it, I just felt a closeness and intimacy that I wouldn't have had any other way.
Yeah.
It's kind of a mutual share for me and Hossein. So we both felt that when you do face those struggles, it's good to go to God with those, because there's a peace and comfort that you can get from taking those concerns and that anxiety and stress you feel to God, and to me that comforting spirit. And I can speak from someone who's made a lot of stupid decisions in life, and it has worked out better when I've gone to God with that, and He's very faithful.
Yeah, good. Anyone else? All right. It's nice when things go as planned. However, in life, things rarely go as planned. And it's in these unplanned situations that often can bring stress and can bring anxiety, can bring real challenges into our life. So this August, just several weeks ago, I headed over to Japan with the intent of climbing Mount Fuji. To give a little background there, I've never been to Japan prior to this trip, and gosh, it's 11 years ago, 12 years ago, we had a Japanese exchange student come and live with us for that 2013, 2014 school year. And she was in our house when she first arrived. Her name's Shiori. She had very limited English, and so we had very limited Japanese. So we did a lot of hand signaling, and at that point, I wasn't up to speed on all the things that Google Translate could do, but I became more proficient over time. But her English improved dramatically over the course of that year, and we kept in touch as she returned to Japan. She spent Christmas with our family a couple years ago. She had come back to a visit, I guess around 2016 or 17 as well. And so we had been talking for the last 4 years about this idea of climbing Mount Fuji together. Now, that came up because in my past, I've climbed some mountains that are relatively well known. Mount Rainier was the first mountain that I climbed that was more than, a strenuous hike. And then a handful of years after that, I went over and climbed Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania. And both those mountains are substantially taller than Mount Fuji. So coming into the Mount Fuji trip, I'm thinking, I did train, but I'm like, I got this, all right? So anyway, I get on a plane, I head over, fly into Tokyo, and Tokyo is a serious city. It does not have a lot of open space. It is really packed. But you get on a bus and you drive 2 hours to the west, heading toward Mount Fuji. This is your environment that you're looking at. And we pulled into the parking lot of Mount Fuji. Now, there were 3 of us. There was me, there was Shiori, and then there was my Shiori's partner. Shiori is on the far right side of that photograph. Her partner, Mako, is in the center. And the 3 of us were part of a group that was going to, an all-Japanese group, except for me, to go ahead and climb up the mountain. All right? So we get started around 11:45 on Thursday morning, and everybody is all smiles. It's great. The first part of the hike is a fairly gentle upslope you start the hike at about the halfway point on Mount Fuji. So you're not starting down at like sea level, you're at about a halfway point. And so this is about 15 minutes into the hike. And it was good. But if you had taken this same picture probably 20 minutes later, I am in trouble. I am in a place where I am starting to I can't control my breathing. I'm panting like a dog when a dog is hot, okay? And sweat is just pouring off of me. And I am just like, what the heck? And at the 45-minute point, the guide says, okay, this is time for a rest. We're just going to take a rest for about 5 minutes, and that, we'll be starting up again. And I'm like, I barely made it. This is the first leg of the hike, and I barely made it to this place. And so 5 minutes go by, and like, okay, I'm starting to be able to breathe like a normal human being again. And I'm thinking, okay, maybe, I don't know what that was. We'll see. So we get going again, and about 15 minutes into the next one, I'm back in the same state. And again, I think it was probably maybe a 30 or 35-minute stint that we went as our group, that the guy said, we're going to break now for another rest. And I thought to myself, now the thoughts aren't just like, I barely made it. It's like, there's no way. There is no way I can hike this mountain. I'm devastated inside, but everything is kind of, I'm like holding it all inside, right? But during that second rest, I called Shiori over and I said, I don't think I'm going to make it. We've got to come up with a plan so you guys can keep going and I can go someplace until you're done. I said, because I can't breathe. I don't know what's going on. And she went and talked to our guide, and he said, listen, just go at your own pace. Take as many breaks as you need going up the mountain, okay? And you don't need to keep up with us. I'll check in with you. He had her cell number, and he said, I'll check in with you just to make sure that things are going okay. And I'm like, we'll see about that. So the main group left, and about 5 minutes after that, I said, let's see what happens. And so we hiked for about 5 more minutes, and I go, I gotta take another break. And I gotta tell you, just to be completely honest, I'm not good at being the weak one, all right? This was so devastatingly humiliating to me and the way I'm wired. It's like, these two women are just like, let's go, all right? But I'm the guy going, ah. So at that 5-minute break, there I am. And there are my two partners, okay? And if you want to know what's going on there, I am trying to control my breathing. And so my eyes are closed, and I'm just focused on breathe, dude. Just breathe, all right? And we sit there for like 5 or 6 or 7 minutes, and again, I'm just thinking, I don't know how we'll ever get to the top of this mountain, okay? But we decide to, they ask, and I said, yeah, let's go ahead. And so they put their packs on, and thankfully, they just started off, a few steps ahead of me. And as I stood up to put my pack back on, a wave of nausea came across. And see, it wouldn't be a good thing to throw up on that left-hand side. This photo is actually the flip of reality, but so I stood up, put my pack on, and I race across the trail to get to the other side, and I lose my breakfast on the side of the mountain. And I'm thinking to myself, now, no one saw that. Well, not no one. Not no one. No one that I cared about saw that, okay? and so I'm like, okay, let's go. And so I start hiking up and behind them. But actually, that was I don't know what was going on inside my body that day, but that was the turning point, okay? Now, it wasn't immediate, but over the next 2 hours, I just regained my strength. I never had anything feel like nauseous again. And the whole breathing thing went away. And didn't return, all right? So that was good, but it was still incredibly challenging. So here the smiles have returned, at least to me anyway. We're now above the cloud line, and it was a kind of a beautiful scene, and one that I could finally begin to enjoy. And then this is us at the very top of the mountain. There's a place there where you can have a meal, a warm meal, and that you walk outside then and see the sunrise the morning. This would have been right about 4 o'clock in the morning on top of Mount Fuji. So just a couple reflections having experience this. First, it's good to have a guide, all right? Now, because of our situation, we didn't spend a lot of time with our guide because they were on kind of the normal time frame and were ahead of us for most of the climb. We did kind of catch up to him at points along the way, but his input, his understanding the big picture, his having encountered situations even like ours in the past and giving us the kind of input that would be really helpful, it's good to have a guide. We have a guide. It came out of some of the feedback we got to the question that was shared with us this morning of places where we've struggled in our life. I haven't struggled physically like this. I can't even tell you a time where it's been that bad. And to have someone in that situation that didn't go, dude, what's the matter with you? Step up, come on. But instead said, hey, take your time, go at your own pace, we'll get this. And I know in my own life, having a God who comes alongside me, especially in times where I'm struggling, and that closeness that speaks words of affirmation over me, not words of condemnation over me. In our culture, we have a kind of a cultural imperative that we tend to be our harshest critics, and when we're not, somebody else will fulfill that role. And so there's this notion that anytime we are in an area that is a challenge, for whatever reason, that I must have fill in the blank. It somehow must be my fault. Instead of connecting with our guide, the one who stands with us and will never forsake us, the one that Jesus spoke about when he said, "But when he, the Spirit of truth, comes, he will guide you into all the truth. He will not speak on his own. He will only speak of what he hears." This is the Spirit that lives inside you, lives inside me. There is never a situation that we will come across that you are in it alone. Even if that's your mindset, even if that's how you might feel at a particular point in time, you're not. The reality is God is with you in the midst of it. And he desires to intimately connect with us actually at all times, but we tend to be a lot more aware when we're in those challenging situations. So it's great to have a guide. It's also great to have a team. All right, I love the fact that God lives within me. But I was praying a lot during the early portions of this trip and this climb, all right? But it was great having a team. God desires you to not simply, this isn't intended to be a life that we go through that's just me and God. Okay, we're good. I don't need anything else. And I would say, yes, you do. It was God who looked at Adam and he said, it's not good for man to be alone. Now, I think when I was a kid and I first heard that story, I felt like God looked at his creation and goes, I don't think it's good for Adam to be alone. Like he was surprised by this situation. And I would say that's not my feeling about what is going on there. I believe the story is saying we're meant for community. We're meant for horizontal connection. In addition, Adam had vertical connection. Adam had his connection to God. It says they walked together in the garden. But it wasn't a complete picture of what God had for his intended way for us to live. And I would say this, for each one of us, we do need a team. Now, I was blessed with an extraordinary 2 co-hikers. They were so patient. They were so kind of just, hey, whatever you need, would just let us know. We'll deal with it. And I was mortified that I was the one causing all of this. But they spoke words of encouragement to me at a time where I desperately needed to hear those. And we need people in our lives that are those kinds of relationships. So often human nature wants to kind of tell somebody what they did wrong, wants to go like, just do this. Just do this is about the worst thing you can do when somebody is in a place of being challenged and their life is feeling fragile. It's like a sledgehammer, all right? What we really need in our lives are people that will come around us and will speak to us in ways that build us up. Paul, in his letter to the Ephesians, says, be completely humble and gentle. Be patient, bearing with one another in love. Yeah. He says in 2 Corinthians, finally, brothers and sisters, rejoice. Strive for full restoration. Encourage one another. Be of one mind. Live in peace. And the God of love and peace will be with you. You know, because we live in a culture that is easily condemning, easily shaming, when we have things that we're struggling with, oftentimes we keep them to ourselves because, one, we don't want to risk getting more shame layered on us, but we also don't want to look bad. We don't, to say to somebody, I struggle with this, makes me feel less than. But you know, the thing is, God's intended plan is that we would go through nothing in isolation. That's our choice. You know, during that second stop, I didn't really, I kept it to myself at that first break. And at the second break, I couldn't anymore. But there are plenty of situations in life where we can. And the benefit of what happened during that second break, where we talked about it and we talked to the guide about it and we got input, directly led to the events that enabled me to complete the hike and the three of us to have the goal that we shared come to fruition. So I would say this, in those situations where you tend to say to yourself, yeah, I can't talk about this, that's a good thing to talk about. Now, finding the appropriate safe place to talk about those things is an important part of the process. And this is where, James encourages us, therefore confess your sins to each other and pray for each other. And this is important. This is how the sentence ends, so that you may be healed. All right, this isn't just, hey, let's have a come to Jesus moment together, a kumbaya, okay? This is so that that healing that needs to take place within you has an opportunity to take place. And bringing things into the light as opposed to keeping them held within is a huge part of that healing process getting underway. Lastly, I would say this, and it was mentioned earlier. We listen the most, and we tend to learn the most from the challenging situations that we face in our lives. And when I say we listen the most, it's when, at least in my life, that when I'm facing something that is a particular challenge, that I am just like, God, what am I to do here? All right, when everything's going smooth, it's like, God, things are good. All right, but the ears may not be all that finely tuned in to hearing what God has to say. But as things kind of go south, now all of a sudden, I'm all ears. And I would just say, it's great to have a place to go, to have a God who wants to engage with us in the challenging times. It is great. We should do that continually. John has been encouraging us in this area of contemplative prayer over the last several months, of having that become more and more not just a once a month experience, but an ongoing practice in our lives, and benefiting from that kind of intimate connection with God in times of prayer. Not filling it up with all of our prayer requests, but actually just communing with the God who loves us. coming back to James, he says this: "Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance." You know, at the early stage of this hike, I was done. And having been placed in that humbling situation, later on in the hike, each Mako and Shiori both had times where the altitude made it really difficult for them to breathe. And I'll tell you what, my ability to have grace and patience, not necessarily two of my strongest suits, okay, for them as they were going through what they were going through later in the hike, was exponentially magnified out of my own struggles early on. And see, this is the thing about when we live our lives transparently, that humbling of ourselves enables us to have grace and mercy, because we experience what we went through in the fullness of having it not just be a private thing. All right? That in that process, we're able to experience God's love through others, and seeing that come at us, we have then the opportunity to develop that capacity. And when the time comes for us to be part of a team supporting somebody else, we have much more the ability to do so. All right, we are going to go to communion so that we don't stay here for the rest of the afternoon. But I will tell you this: God has intended you to have people in your life that will be a support team for you. Now, it sounds very clinical when I say it that way. I'm talking about authentic relationships that you're willing to go deeper with than your casual acquaintances, all right? I met with somebody recently who said, I have a great group of friends from high school that I still am in touch with. And we still do things together, great group of friends. And he went on to say, but we don't really ever talk about anything deep. That makes me sad. We need relationships in our lives where we can talk about things that are deep. And we need to be the people that are those people to others that need also to talk about things that are deep. We need to be a safe place. I'm going to ask the servers to come on up. And just to reiterate, this table is not the table of Oak Brook Church, it's the table of Jesus Christ, and everyone is invited to join us in communion. Just go ahead and hold on to the bread and the cup. We'll partake of it together. The group Need to Breathe has a song called Fall on Me. The words to that song are this: you were there to pick me up and tell me I was good enough. It doesn't matter what I've done, you pull me closer. The highs and lows and in-betweens, you're the one that's there for me. When I hurt and when I bleed, you make it better. You always find the best in me, the diamonds hiding underneath. every insecurity that I can't cover. I can leave them at the door. You never need me to be more than who I am if I am yours, and I am yours now. I am yours now. Thanks. The chorus goes like this: you will always be the one that I can call, the safest place to fall for me when I cannot stand. To me, that song first and foremost speaks to the relationship God desires to have with every one of us. But as those who are called to be followers of Jesus, this song should also speak to the people in our lives that have blessed us with being safe places, and that we would recognize our responsibility to also be that safe place. Let's take of the bread together. And the God who loved us so much that he gave his life for us, that we would also lay our lives down for one another. Let's partake. This last picture was when we returned to base camp. There's a weariness in each one of the eyes of the three, but there's a joy as well. We did something really difficult together, and it just speaks to me of the quality of the life God desires for us to have in everything we go through. Let's pray. God, thank you. Thank you that you never leave us. You never forsake us. You stand with us, and you've called us to be people that are those kind of people in the lives of those we come in contact with. That we would be a safe place. That we would be a place where those that we are connected with can fall and be supported when they cannot stand on their own. Literally, I was in that place, and I so appreciate the people you had with me to lift me up with words, with arms. Just praise you for who you are and who you've called us to be, God. In Jesus' name, amen. Just a last couple images here on the left there.